So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who we collectively refer to as our artist in residence here at the RCAS. Miss Elizabeth Dicker is an autistic consultant and self-advocate. She has spoken on panels for the Byrne Seminars here at Rutgers and is a part of the advisory board at the Lifespan Lab. Elizabeth is a certified special education teacher who holds a master's degree in applied behavior analysis. She has a strong interest in curriculum development, assessment tools, and research. Elizabeth is grateful to be a part of the Lifespan Lab to further research to expand knowledge and opportunities for autistic adults. She enjoys drawing portraits and spending time at Felicity House. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Dicker.
I put it up here. Okay. Can I talk? This is fine. You can hear me.
Perfect.
Okay, because I don't want to use that thing. I'm calling this Reflections on My Artist Residency at the Rutgers Center for Adult Autism Services. And that is a picture of me sitting in this really cool rocking chair that's actually over there. It's not here right now. But if you can see, that's me, drawing me. And I drew all my drawings on iPad. I used to just draw by hand, but then 4 years ago I got an iPad. So actually anything that's printed out, we just print it on canvas or we print it on paper. So I draw by hand on my iPad. I'm also informally calling this my armchair artist residency because I sit right there and then I'm immersed in everything. I'm immersed in everything, people coming in and out. Considering that this is a neurodiversity conference, I'm going to start by telling you my accommodations up front. So giving this speech is the easiest thing that I will do today because this is a scripted monologue that I've been scripting for 3 months. And the rest of the day is a lot harder. So during the lunchtime and the cocktail hour, I probably really want to talk to people, but probably only out there or down there. And Christopher is giving me that conference room that I can use as a home base. And there also might be times where I'm too overwhelmed and not want to talk to you. Like this morning, I kind of yelled at Bob because he was talking to me and I was not having it. So he came up with this little card. So if it says that, don't talk to me. And if it says that, you can talk to me. I do want to talk to you, but you're not going to want to talk to me if I'm upset. So I'm going to start this speech by talking about what led me to come to the Rutgers Center for Adult Autism Services. First, for some context, I have autism, and I am probably best described as what is called twice exceptional. So you have like really significant strengths and really significant disability, so it's like two ends of a thing. To me, disability means the inability to do certain things, like a functional impairment. So like if you were blind, you couldn't see, you could learn to get around, you could navigate, but you still couldn't see. Or if you were dyslexic, you could learn to read, but it would still need to be taught differently, and you'd always find reading challenging. It just isn't something that comes naturally to you. But I don't think being disabled means I'm wrong or broken, though. It's just how my brain works differently. And having autism is actually very hard. But what makes my life more challenging is the systems that I have to try to navigate. The ignorance of incompetence that I run up against, and the constant pushback that I face in trying to get my needs met. Especially as an autistic adult, there are huge barriers to getting appropriate supports and services, and I am in a minority in a society that tends to view disabled people as having less value. There's also a general lack of understanding about autism in society, and in my case, it's the lack of understanding that someone can be twice exceptional, and I've lost, I'm running out of coughing. I've lost the amount of times that I've been told, just try harder, or you're so smart, you should be able to do that. I'm a very determined person. I try hard at everything, but when people just don't get me, that kind of makes my life way harder. Ultimately, I just want to be seen as a person who has value, is understood, and gets my individual needs met. And I think that is true for anybody, but the constant pushing against barriers is tiring. And being autistic in a world that's not so understanding or accepting makes me feel like I'm a square peg trying to be shoved into a round hole. So a few months ago, I lost another job. After losing this job that was specifically designed to try to meet my needs, I didn't see how I was going to work in the future, and if I wasn't working, I saw very limited options. The state of adult autism services and supports is pretty bleak, and I am a realist who is very prone to perseverating, and all this negative thinking about my limited options led me into sinking into depression, where I basically hibernated. The only way my dad could get me to go take a walk with him was to let me perseverate on my negative thoughts, otherwise I would not leave the house. Because I felt like my situation at that point was hopeless and nothing would ever change. I really needed a routine that got me out of the house with some form of support and structure. And I also really needed help to get myself out of this negative spiral. So I reached out to Dr. Christopher Menente for advice. I've been involved at the Rutgers Center for Adult Autism Services. Like, I did the peers group, therapy groups, been on panels, consulted on a research study. I've known Christopher for probably about 3 years, and he knew me somewhat, and he probably knows me a lot better now. If anyone's gonna have good advice about what to do, though, I think it was gonna be him. So I went to meet with him, and I didn't have any hope in terms of I couldn't see any possible opportunities for assistance of any kind for what I was needing. Christopher started by looking at the things I can do well by myself and love to do, and one of those things is drawing. I actually love drawing portraits and illustrations. There's some down there. In most interactions, I tend not to look at people's faces because I think there's too much data in that. But when I'm drawing, the fact that I can see all the details is actually a really good thing. People keep asking me when I learned to draw or how long I've been drawing. I've drawn forever, like since I was a toddler, and I draw hours a day. So I don't know how to answer that question. I never took any classes. Drawing is something I'm just naturally gifted in, and developing skills just through the amount of time I spend drawing. In school, I struggled because I also have learning disabilities, and art and music classes were always something that I did well in without having to try so hard. So those things like art that came easily to me were things I really enjoyed and kind of a break from trying so hard. So when I met with Christopher, he came up with a plan, which was I would come here every day, or as many days as I wanted, but I ended up coming here every day to do my art. And he knew that I'd sold my art before because I have done commissions, but that's actually kind of a pressure in itself. So he explained that I can make art, and then if we did end up selling it, we sold it, but that was not the purpose. The purpose here was just for me to make art. He also had no expectations on what that art was, unlike in a commission where somebody tells you what they want you to draw. And he said I could speak at this conference if I wanted to, but also no pressure on that. So I started coming here with the sole purpose to do art, taking up kind of an informal residency to observe and express what I noticed around me and convey that through my art. So I'm going to show some of my art as I reflect on my experience here. Go that way. Nope, go backwards. Okay, we're on that one. So for each picture that I did, that one, and there's one there and one there, I did a little description, which I'm not going to read because I'm going to talk about it, but if you want to read it later, you can. When I came here on my first day, I came without any instructions on what to draw. So I did what I do in any new space that I get into, is I walk around, and I kind of look at everything, I kind of touch everything, and so I was kind of getting a sense of it. And I noticed how beautiful, inviting, and functional the space was. I noticed that these lights not only look like Harry Potter lights, but also they're not doing that buzzing thing that a lot of lights tend to do. I noticed that as soon as you come in here, there's this huge main space, so you're just like right in the middle of everything. It's not like other places. Like I got lost in that psychology clinic one time, that was a maze, and just office spaces. But there's tons of things here. There's like 2 clinics tucked away, a full kitchen, a laundry room, a shower. It's like tiny functional spaces. And the noisier things like the pinball machines are down over there. Also, you can't really tell from here, but where you're sitting, the way that Christopher put the couches, like just promote social interactions because the couches are put this way. So there's really clear that much time and energy and thought went into the intentional design of this space. So I pointed out what I noticed about the space to Christopher, and he told me that it took over 2 years of him working with other people to design this space, down to like the ceilings have acoustic insulation in them, which I didn't know. And the placement of the windows are placed that way so that there's maximum light coming in. And he took all these factors into consideration. Universal design is about making environments accessible by removing barriers to promote access to accommodate all needs. And this building is a great example of that in its intentional design, in the building structure and the way the environment is structured. Because there are very few physical spaces that I actually feel comfortable in. So I'm not comfortable in a grocery store, a gym, a restaurant, because these are all loud, large, not sensory friendly, and potentially overwhelming environments. So I always need to try to tolerate the environment I'm in or just avoid going there. And anyone who grows up in the special ed system like me is probably used to having your class down the hall or in a closet or in the hallway. So my needs as someone who has a disability are generally kind of an afterthought. And society dictates that I need to be okay with that, bare minimum. But I shouldn't be okay with that. What the RCAS has created in the intentional design of this space is so extraordinary and uncommon, but that shouldn't be the case either. Universal design principles and actually considering the needs of people with disabilities should just be common practice and the norm. Disabled people shouldn't have to be amazed or grateful that somebody is doing the bare minimum to accommodate them. We deserve to have the same considerations and not to be just a casual afterthought when it comes to meeting our needs. We need to move away from accepting less than and pushing for universal access. People who have disabilities will always be neglected and disregarded as having less value as humans in society, unless there's an active push against that by the neurodiversity movement. Although the name of this building is the Rutgers Center for Adult Autism Services, and many programs are housed in this building, the building itself is meant to serve as a community center and is actually open to everybody. And I think I'm probably the first person who actually uses this building just as a community center, because as I spent my time here, I got to observe just about everything that happened daily, especially because the armchair I sat in was right in the middle of everything. There are 3 areas that the RCAS focuses on: service, training, research. I got to observe and talk to everybody in the community center in my time here, and I can't really speak to the research aspect because that's not something I could actually observe, but the focus on service was evident in many ways. These are things I observed. I observed the respectful way that job coaches interacted with participants, taking into consideration that person's individual needs and choices. Because this is a community center, so if someone is here, it's not their workplace, so having choices in what you do or don't do with your time here is really important. This was evident in the multiple ways I would see staff offering choices and the participants saying nope, or telling staff I'm done with that halfway through an activity. But having self-directed freedom and autonomy over what you do in your free time should be a natural thing. But unfortunately, that is not always the case for disabled people. I noticed the peer mentors coming to the community center to hang out, making plans to go somewhere. I saw BCBAs huddled together to make quick changes to make sure the days ran smoothly for everyone. And then there was the gradual but significant changes in a participant in the intensive outpatient clinic, who not only made amazing progress, but every day I can see the happiness and joy that that person feels being in a space where they are getting the right supports for them. I got to talk with parents of people coming to the Center for Assessment and Therapy. I got to learn about their reasons for coming here and their positive experiences at the Psychological Services Clinic. I also got to observe a lot of the training going on here, and I think I may be more attuned to that because of my background. So some things I noticed were the interest and passion of the job coaches and behavior techs when I talked to them about why they wanted to work in this field. Many of them are in training to become BCBAs, specifically wanting, yes, actually wanting to work with autistic adults, which is rare. The continuous in-person oversight of the BCBAs training others, the students coming in for classes, specifically to learn more about ABA and autism, ranging from those first-year undergrads coming in for the Byrne Seminar to people who are pursuing their doctoral degrees. The whole entire team of the intensive outpatient program who work every day as a really close team to meet the intense needs of a client, and the many people I talked with who are on their way to psych doctoral degrees and some of the most passionate people about what they do. This passion and dedication to service, training, and research definitely stems from the top down. Students at any level are continuously learning from doctoral level staff who are not only very knowledgeable, but also very ethically sound. They pass their dedication and passion down through these students, who will then go on to expand high-quality services for autistic adults. And just seeing this passion and dedication gives me hope. a hope that there will be growing improvements for adult services for people who have autism. Because innovation and change is happening here daily, and I'm so glad I get to observe that. The Rutgers Center for Adult Autism Services is a community center and is open to everybody, which means many people come in here who have no connection with autism at all. It's a hub of activity, and I use this center as a home base. So the people come in from IT to do their jobs, but will also greet and talk to anyone. The guys dropping off the mail stay and play pinball. There's also people who come for the first time to tour the building or just drop something off. By the nature of it being a community center, interactions between autistic adults and other people who come by just happen naturally. I know it says Adult Autism Center in the name, but in a typical center-based program, no one just stops by, and those natural opportunities for interaction are way less frequent. This is, in a way, reverse inclusion. If you build it, they will come. The center is so inviting and welcoming that people are just drawn to it, and I know that was by design. If we are going to be more inclusive, then we need to have spaces accessible to all where everyone is welcome. I was asked once on a panel, do I prefer to be in a special needs space or not, or special needs spaces or not? My answer is, I prefer to be in a space where people and the environment are accommodating and there is a lack of judgment, where I don't have to constantly try to adapt to navigate spaces and interact with people who are not accommodating or judgmental. It just takes some stress off and I feel more comfortable. It's kind of like that social model of disability. If the world were more accommodating and understanding, would disability be a disability? That is a rhetorical question. I think I would still have the same functional limitations I do now, but if the world were more like the environment and people here, my life would be much easier, and it would be much easier for me to thrive, not just survive. There's an ebb and flow to the RCAS. Sometimes hardly anyone's around, and the next minute, 5 people are playing pinball, or 10 people are gathering in the kitchen cooking something, and the unstructuredness of this can be overwhelming to me at times. Although I like being around other people doing things, it can be a lot. Also, any changes or interactions throw me. And when I'm overwhelmed, I get pretty upset and need a change in environment and just some less interaction to calm down. Christopher, from the first day, showed me spaces in the building that I could go to when I needed to get away from everything. He also introduced me to a couple people I could go to if I needed help or have questions about something. These things function as natural supports. Natural supports are people that you can count on to be helpful, but are not paid to do so. In an environment, natural supports could be places that serve a need for anyone and can be utilized by anyone, provides a kind of safety net. Using these natural supports here have helped me tremendously while I'm still in the process of obtaining paid supports. If I'm upset, I know where I can go take a break and who I can ask to help me calm down. If I'm lost now, I know who to call and they can help me direct me back here. If I'm confused about an interaction or what I'm supposed to do, I have certain people I know I can go and ask. I mean, everyone uses natural supports, but I think the difference is, speaking as someone who has disabilities, is that the first thing is I'm not always aware of or know how to access those supports. If Christopher hadn't introduced me to people, told me where I could go for help, showed me those places, I probably wouldn't have been developing these natural supports on my own. And secondly, these people who function as natural supports are not paid to care, and that makes a huge difference. The balance of people paid to care, to look after you when you have a disability, is sometimes really off balance. And so to have some people in your life who are just helpful and not being paid to do so means a lot. My takeaway from this is now that I see the huge value of being able to access and utilize natural supports. These natural supports here have enhanced my life and well-being. Next slide. Okay. This picture I'm calling Connections. You can read the description if you want. The piece is based on one interaction that I observe here daily and interact with daily, because there's one guy who comes in, every time he comes in, he high-fives me or fist bumps me, and every time he leaves, and he does this to everybody, not just me, he high-fives and fist bumps everybody. And nobody told him to do that. That's just his way of connecting. Another connection I want to comment on was between me and another person who was minimally verbal, rarely initiated communication, but he sometimes come up to me and look at me intently, and I would look back. And this connection developed into him verbally pointing for me to come over. We exchanged names of favorite snack foods, which led to high fives, and then me going on the swings with him at the park. And these were just naturally occurring, spontaneous ways of connecting. There are many ways to connect with other people, and none of them are wrong. I know that non-autistic ways of connecting are the norm, and that's one reason why it's on us to learn social skills. I like to think of learning social skills as developing tools I could use in connecting with other people who don't have autism, but it's really hard because every time I learn a skill, I have to try to catalog it in my head, memorize it as a rule, and take it out and then apply it. And a lot of times, I don't care, or I forget, because I'm so in the moment. And it is also a manual process to try to look up and dig out the correct social skill to use at the correct time. So I am much more comfortable being social in ways of connecting that come more naturally to me. And here at the RCAS, this is great because my attempts to connect are reciprocated and not shut down. But having weak typical social skills is also a barrier for me in obtaining and keeping employment because my way of communicating and connecting is in the minority. When I observe others connecting here in ways that aren't always the norm, I notice their joy and happiness in that connection, and those positive feelings I and others get from those interactions. Those I think are the most important. Social isolation is also a big issue for anyone with a disability, but particularly autism, because I am very content to be by myself. Pacing and singing songs to myself is like my favorite fallback activity, and I'm very good at occupying myself. But this can be a problem because I don't set out to self-isolate, but it can turn into self-isolation in the absence of specific opportunities to socially connect, and in the absence of people who can communicate with me in a literal and direct way that I understand. Because I've worked in typical workplaces. I went to work, did my work, went home, did not connect or communicate with anybody, and I got shut down in any of my attempts. So even though I wasn't isolated, as in I was still around people, I was still very socially isolated. The reason I am less socially isolated when at the RCAS is that there are many opportunities to connect in a way that's natural to me. I can ask Scales participants if they want to dance, play a board game, go on a walk, and they also ask me. This leads to fun, informal connections. I can show my art on my iPad to everyone, which leads to people coming up to me to see my art. I've asked everybody who works here what their name is, what they do. I've asked this from everybody, from undergrads taking a class, to visitors, to job coaches, to staff with PhDs. But this leads to opportunities to talk about ABA and autism to the staff, which is a special interest of mine, or just to be an informal ambassador as I share information to visitors or anyone coming to visit here. The staff who work here know how to be clear and direct with me, setting limits on how long I can talk about a specific topic before they need to return to work, or what they're doing, or explaining clearly if there is a difference in a rule change, like waiting if I need to talk to them. They also don't judge me when I melt down, which happens occasionally, but not all that frequently here. People are respectful and kind to me, and that also matters a lot. They greet me when I come in, if even the most of the time I don't actually greet them. My way of communicating isn't being shut down, giving me the opportunity to connect without negative feedback. I personally think it's the lack of social opportunities that is the biggest problem in regards to social isolation. And for me in particular, a lack of social opportunities and the level in which I communicate best. So if there are groups of people joking, using sarcasm, talking about going out drinking, even though that's a social opportunity, I cannot connect. I personally need social opportunities that revolve around information or activities, and I think it's so important that I and everyone should be able to come in contact with social opportunities that give us a chance to connect in the ways that we are most comfortable. Because expanding your circles of connection is the opposite of social isolation. I want to say, though, that not everyone is equally skilled or is interested in connecting, because I used to not be able to express a desire to connect in an expressive way, but that didn't mean I wasn't happy or content to be around people or being part of the environment, and I did notice that in others here. I don't like it when people have said about me or others who have autism that we're in our own worlds, because there are not two separate worlds. The way we interact and connect with each other may be different, but everybody is more similar than different in our human need to be included and connect in our own ways, no matter how that comes across. Connection, I think, happens when people are seen, heard, and understood for who they are. So I wanted to create one large picture that when people entered this space, it would immediately catch their attention, like when you walk in there. It's right there. This is symbolic. I'm calling this symbolic piece Foundations of Growth, and I'm going to explain why. I felt it was important to start my drawing process with the roots of the trees, because roots serve two important functions. They provide stability and grounding for the tree, and they also provide nourishment. But roots are also barely visible, but without them, the tree wouldn't be able to grow. Without roots as a solid foundation, your essential needs for mental health and stability wouldn't be met. So access to appropriate mental health services and services for someone's in crisis are vitally important. Everybody deserves to have good mental health and not be in a state of crisis. For autistic people, these services are greatly lacking in quality and availability, and autistic people are at a greater risk of dying early, in part due to untreated mental health needs and appropriate services. But here at the RCAS, there's both the psychological services clinic and the intensive outpatient clinic that address these needs. These clinics are located in the building that are kind of like roots because they're not all that visible, but they serve a huge underlying need. If those basic essential psychological needs are not met, then anybody, would not have the stability or nourishment to be able to grow and develop. Assuming these needs are solidly met, then symbolically, people can now grow and thrive. Here you see the branches. I wanted to draw different branches to represent different pathways people take in life. All the choices, twists, and turns in life, I wanted to symbolize that with branches. A tree can exist in almost any condition, even when people want to cut it down or chop off its branches. But these experiences do have an impact on the tree. I don't think anyone gets through life without experiences that can cut us down or break us. Having disabilities, I think one of my greatest strengths is my determination. I have a strong ability to be able to keep trying, even when things are really difficult. Those systems and societal barriers are really tough to work with, and I get a large amount of negative feedback just for being myself. But I think the more that anyone can access positive experiences and interactions, the more I believe they can grow and flourish despite whatever happens. The more society is understanding and we are getting proper supports, the more we are able to grow without being cut down. The sunbeams around the tree represent circles of support, those people in our lives who are supportive, including natural supports. The leaves represent individually and are also in different stages of their growth and development. Because we're all different and we are all growing and developing, but also to note that a leaf is a leaf, so in that we are all the same. And finally, I made some of the leaves taking off into butterflies, because a butterfly is something that a caterpillar eventually evolves into. So I wanted to draw butterflies as the last stage of the tree in this picture. This tree has stable roots, firm branches, and is thriving, not just surviving. Previously to coming here, I was depressed and socially isolated. And since being here, the positive interactions and experiences I'm having give me more hope for the future and increase self-confidence in my abilities. I feel understood, I feel like I have value, and that I belong. Although Christopher has to continually reassure me that I will not get in trouble or kicked out of this space for just being me, and slowly I'm starting to trust that he means that. I'm getting natural support, and I get to teach others in informal ways. I get to stumble in the beginning of classes held here and informally talk to the students. I get to give advice when asked from staff here who have children of autism, who have autism of their own. I get to do this lecture, and so my self-confidence and my abilities to teach are growing. And I just wake up every day wanting to come here. I'm not in a state of crisis, and my mental health is stable. Like this tree, I am thriving. I also did not want to draw an autism tree. I wanted to draw a tree to express how the needs of everybody are human needs first and foremost. So this tree is symbolic of everybody's right to grow and develop with their needs met and their individuality respected. Here's what I hope you can take away from this speech about my observations from being here. That everyone deserves access and opportunities to getting their needs met, especially those most basic needs like mental health and stability. That accommodation and intentional design should not be an extraordinary, uncommon thing, but something that is commonplace to make spaces and communities more accessible to all. That everyone connects and communicates differently, but we are all the same in our human need for connection. That we all need to work together so that the pressure to adapt and change is not placed entirely on neurodivergent people, and that we can work together to be able to shift that balance. That people shouldn't be separated and segregated based on their differences, but inclusion happens when universal accommodations and designs can be provided to all. And that everyone should be respected and valued as a person, and people who have disabilities should not be viewed or treated as less than. The RCAS serves autistic adults like me, which is a very underserved and overlooked population. There needs to be a continued focus and push to increase the access to these kind of supports that would address these needs. The passion and dedication found here is what drives the programs that serve a very small amount of autistic adults. These programs need to grow and replicate because everybody is deserving of supports to meet their individual needs. Quality services and supports shouldn't just end because someone turned 21. So now I'm going to go on a rant here to illustrate a point, because yesterday I met a mom who I knew her kid who goes to the Douglas Developmental Center, and he's 21 and he's graduating, and luckily she is an advocate, so she's making a self-directed program, but he can't just go to the day program because the day program is small and can't accept any more people. And there's so many people out there like him who, once they turn 21, this is a guy who like needs intensive services. It's just gone. Like it shouldn't happen like that. This is just way too common. Adult programs that are high quality and provide individualized supports can only take so many people. The scale program can only take so many people. People have no place to go, and they end up in a generic day program or graduating into the couch, which basically means they just sit at home. There's people who have DDD budgets and don't use them because there's no programs out there that will serve their needs. And this is in no way acceptable, because autism doesn't stop at 21. And this removal of quality services and supports leads to extremely poor outcomes, including increased problematic behaviors, emergency room visits, people in crisis, families in crisis, and we need to come together to change these statistics. Rutgers is a university that is an amazing place filled with innovation, resources of knowledge, and research. And I'm really happy to see how many people came here today to attend this summit, both in person and virtually. Because just by taking time out of your day, you've already shown your support and interest in neurodiversity. But it's one thing to sit here and listen to it. I challenge you to take that passive interest and turn it into action. Seize the opportunities that you have today and going forward to continue to spark engaging discussions and collaborate and partner with others in this community. So next year we can look back and see how much the neurodiversity movement has grown here at Rutgers and make some more progress towards cutting down these barriers that are the cause of the poor outcomes autistic adults face. Because progress can be made. Progress needs to be made. As the anthropologist Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it is the only thing that ever has. Please come stop by this community center. Whoever you are and whatever you want to use the space for, you are welcome. Whether for that game of pinball, to use the conference room, to play a board game, cook a meal, come for a tour, everyone is welcome, and that is the point. And that's the end of my speech.